said she wasn't going to freeze these income tax thresholds because it would otherwise affect working people. She then goes and does it. They have been crucified by these national insurance increases, absolutely crucified, business rates and things. These are livelihoods at stake. Part of the problem at the heart of this budget, and why it's not a proper comprehensive plan for actually getting the economy growing, is that Rachel and Keir are in hock to the left of the Labour Party, who sit on their backbenches and are constraining what they can do.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Daily Expresso with me, JJ Anisiobi. Today, I'm joined by Shadow Chancellor and top Tory Sir Mel Stride. Sir Mel, thank you for coming to Daily Express HQ.
Great pleasure, JJ.
I won't call you Sir again. I know you don't like that so much.
No, I'm a man of the people.
You are.
So, keep it real.
What did you make of Rachel Reeves' budget?
Oh, I thought it was just all the wrong choices, sadly.
Yeah.
You know, putting up taxes on hard-working people with this extension of the income tax threshold freeze, which is something that she basically said she wouldn't do. She ruled it out, if you remember, at the budget last year, saying it would hit working people, and that's exactly what she's done. And quite a lot of the spending, of course, is just going into the welfare budget, so more on benefits. I think they're the wrong choices. I think what she should have done is to concentrate on getting government spending down to allow both herself to bear down on the debt a bit, but equally to cut taxes to get the economy growing.
Okay, but if we're being fair, the markets have reacted favourably to it. Stocks have risen, so has the pound. So success?
Well, look, you can't judge a budget within 24 hours of it happening. You've got to wait and see how it pans out. I think that's the first point. But the second
tell Liz Truss that.
Well, okay, all budgets are different. But anyway, I think that's generally the rule. Is I would wait and see a little bit.
Okay.
I think a few other things I'd say. One is, I think, you know, when it comes to what actually happened in the sequencing up to the actual budget. All this shenanigans around leaking stuff and flying so many kites, it was blocked the sun out of the sky, right, from the Treasury. I think that unsettled the market. So I think the very fact that we finally arrived at a point where we knew what was happening was a kind of settling effect in itself. But that doesn't mean the decisions taken within it are the right ones. And I think there will be pressure further on down the line because she's back-ending a lot of the pain, these tax rises nearer to the next general election, while front-ending some of the spending, particularly on benefits and so on. And I think the markets will be looking very closely through the shorter to medium term as to whether she can deliver on the plan that she set out. And I have my firm doubts on that. But let's see how it plays out over the coming weeks.
Okay. But what message does this send to working people? People are calling this the benefit budget.
Yeah,
and as you say,
it sends the wrong message entirely. Look, economics is about redistribution of resources to a degree, okay, and that is very much the socialist way. But it is also about incentives, okay? And if you make it harder and more expensive to employ people, you will generate higher unemployment, lower wages, you know? If you put make benefits more generous, then you will have a greater incentive for people to stay on or go on to benefits. And I'm afraid that's what we're seeing. There's no overarching strategy in this budget that's to do with growth. There's no big idea around tax reform or getting public spending under control or getting welfare down or anything like that. It's simply another slug of tax increases on top of the 40 billion we had back in October of last year. So no wonder, if you look at all the forecasts around the OBR that we saw yesterday, growth down, inflation up, living standards, what economists call real disposable household income, worse than it was forecast the last time it was forecast back in the spring. So all those indicators pointing in the wrong direction, I'm afraid.
Is it fair to criticise her and say, well, she lied. She said no to taxes. She now raised taxes. Don't you all lie, essentially? All the parties say before they get to power, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Then once you're actually there, maybe you fall short sometimes.
Look, I think there are certain moments in your political history where you make a solemn commitment, and I think a manifesto is an example of that. And I think if you say in a manifesto, as I believe Labour did, that they would not be increasing tax on working people, and you promptly go off and do that, particularly given that Rachel Reeves actually repeated that commitment back at the time of the last budget. She said she wasn't going to freeze these income tax thresholds because it would otherwise affect working people. She then goes and does it. I think that is of a particular order of breaking a promise, which means that I actually think, and so does Kemi, that she should consider her position.
So you wanted to resign?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's
I do.
sternest answer you've given.
Look, and I don't go around. I think in my political career, I can't remember probably ever having gone around saying that I think people should resign. Some people say that about everybody they ever meet in politics. I don't. But I think it's so serious now, and I think the breach of trust and the broken promises and what has happened as a consequence to our economy and for the livelihoods of millions of people. And many businesses, I'm up and down the country seeing and visiting businesses very regularly, at all sizes. I'll go to a Billericay High Street I was in the other day, going in and out of the local hairdressers and all the rest of it. They have been crucified by these national insurance increases, absolutely crucified, business rates and things. These are livelihoods at stake, and these things don't happen by accident. They are the choices that this Chancellor has taken. And remember when they were in opposition, they said, don't worry, it's not Labour of old. We're not going to be ramping up people's taxes left, right and centre. But within a few short months, that's precisely what they did. And I don't think that is forgivable, actually.
Okay. She lifted the 2-child benefit cap. How much is that really going to cost taxpayers?
About £3 billion a year. So it's a lot of money. A lot of money. So if you think that all that pain that's being delivered by the income tax freeze on the thresholds are going to drag about 1.5 to 2 million people into paying more tax than they otherwise would have done to a higher tax band, that raises about 8 billion. So 3 of that, half that pain or thereabouts, is going directly into that one policy. And I don't think it's fair that if somebody is a hard-working taxpayer, goes out, does the right thing, wants to have a larger family, they have to take difficult decisions around whether they can afford to have a large family. And I don't see why those on benefits should not have to take similar decisions or should expect the taxpayer to pick up the tab.
How do you feel about the triple lock? Farage is saying he can't guarantee the future of it. Some of your own colleagues actually said that it should be scrapped as well.
Yeah, so look, what people forget is that under the last Labour government, we had the 4th highest level of pensioner poverty in Europe. The triple lock was instrumental to moving from a situation where we were so often reading about terrible stories of pensioners in poverty in the papers to a point where a lot of that problem has now eased. And you've got to bear in mind that pensioners can't adjust their economic circumstances like working age people because they can't get another job, work more hours or whatever it may be. So I think it's important that we stand by them. So we stand by the triple lock.
You did say before it was unsustainable in the long term.
I think I used the expression the very, very, very long term. I think there were 3 verys in there. And it was simply a simple mathematical fact that if you take something with 3 variables and you keep selecting the highest variable to increase the baseline by, that is the direction of travel. But we are very clear that we stand by the triple lock.
Okay, that's good because our viewers, they want to know. Our viewers, our listeners, our readers, they want to know that the triple lock is going to stay in place and pensioners will be protected. And you're saying the Tories will do that.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
That's where we are.
You passed the test. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Can I go now?
No.
Okay.
No. Rachel Reeves also said, she's blamed everyone, but she's also said that she doesn't need to be mansplained to. Have you been mansplaining things to Rachel Reeves?
No, not at all. I've been holding her to account. And I really think, actually, that this is a complete misnomer. This is just a smokescreen. It's a distraction. What's going on here is nothing to do with gender. It's to do with political competence. And I'm afraid she has not shown sufficient political competence. And I thought Kemi was quite right yesterday in her response to the budget speech.
She savaged her.
She was on
Kemi
fire.
Savaged her.
She was totally on fire.
Yeah.
This is serious stuff, and she's taking the fight to Labour.
Do you feel sorry for Rachel Reeves at all? She cried that time in Commons when the pressure was mounting. Yesterday, Kemi obliterated her. I spoke to Esther McVeigh today. Esther McVeigh says that she thought that Reeves was shell-shocked and that maybe she was going to cry again. Do you feel, actually, she's had a tough year. Maybe we'll go a little bit easier on her.
So I personally, in politics, always see the person ultimately rather than the opposing politician, because we're all human beings and we're all vulnerable and so on. And when Rachel was obviously in a very sad state on that particular occasion, the first I was aware of it was I was sitting on our front bench and I looked over and I saw what was going on. And my heart went out to her. I felt very, very sorry for her. I didn't know what was going on, and I'm not sure we entirely do now. But maybe we don't need to know. It was enough that it happened. I texted her afterwards and said that, I hope that she was okay and that I felt for her. And she sent me a very nice response back after a little bit of time and so on. And on a personal level, I think, there are limits to how far you sort of wade in and start, attacking people. I think you try and keep it to the politics. But people need to be held to account, and if they're doing the wrong thing, you shouldn't be shy in saying so.
Okay. Mansion tax, that was also thrown around yesterday by Rachel Reeves. It's not going to affect most people, but it is going to also affect farmers who are already having to struggle with the inheritance tax. What does this say about Labour's contempt, I suppose, for farmers?
I despair. I mean, I have a very rural constituency with lots of farmers.
Yeah, that's Devon,
right in the heart of Devon, half of Dartmoor National Park. And I think a situation where you've had a farm that has been in the family sometimes for, literally some of them, centuries almost. Farmers that you can meet where they can trace it all the way back. And you put them in a position where to pass that farm on, or indeed it's same with family businesses, passing a family business on.
Yeah.
You know that because of inheritance tax now, that enterprise is going to have to be broken up. I think it's very, very unfortunate. Now, ironically, it was a Labour government in the 1970s that brought in those reliefs under the inheritance tax regime to prevent that happening. Because back then, even they recognised that it was not good economics to have that to be the situation. So I'm very worried about farmers. And as you say, some of them will fall due to this additional charge on more expensive properties. Do you know what, though? It's all part of a general emphasis that Labour has on not recognising that wealth creation matters, actually. They're not recognising that people that go out and take risks and build businesses and accumulate capital and, yes, become wealthy as a consequence, okay? Not recognising that we should actually be celebrating that, encouraging it, because it's good for all of us if we have a vibrant, successful economy. We've got far too many people leaving the country at the moment. They're going to the United Arab Emirates and Milan and to Portugal and all these other places, and they're taking their wealth with them and they're taking their ability with them. And it's not just even the super wealthy that are doing it now. Lots of very mobile, very talented young people are simply leaving. If you take the 16,000, this is an estimate, but 16,000 high net worth people that have left our country since Labour has been in office, the tax that has walked out the door needs about a third to 500,000 people on average earnings to pay that same amount of tax. So it's always the wider population that suffers when the wealthy get given the boot, which is what this government's doing. It's the wrong approach.
Do you think Rachel from Accounts has put her own personal survival ahead of voters?
Well, okay, so on the term Rachel from Accounts, that is not one that I use, actually, and I don't think I've ever used it. Because personally, I just don't like that expression. But your question, sorry, you distracted me. Or I distracted myself. Sorry, what was the question?
Has she put her own survival, her own political survival, has she put that ahead of actual voters?
I think, let me phrase it this way. I think the fact that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are in a politically precarious position with their own backbenchers has meant that the inner workings of the Parliamentary Labour Party have actually been driving economic decisions. And I think that is why we've seen the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap, for example. I really don't think that Rachel Reeves would naturally do that. And that is the suspicion of many commentators, that it's not naturally something she would do. But she has done it. And I think the reason why that has happened, and going for wealth and, higher tax bans on properties and various other things, is to make some on the backbenches happy and keep them calmer. But that's not good economics.
No, it's not at all. Before we talk about Mel the person, I do want to get to that. But I want to talk about some breaking news today. The ONS says net migration is down 69% year on year. So, again, a success for Labour, no?
No, a success for the Conservatives. To be fair, I haven't looked at or dissected the numbers, because there are inflows and outflows, of course, within that. But what we did do when we were at the tail end of our time in government, and this was James Cleverly when he was Home Secretary, was change the visa arrangements, particularly around family visas, in order to drive down net migration, which had gone way, way up to an unacceptable level, over 900,000. And those changes that we brought in, you're now seeing the benefits of that, and that's why those numbers are declining. So,
what about the Boris wave?
Yeah, well, I just put my hands up there, JJ. I did say that it went far too high. No, look.
But you can't. I can't congratulate.
One can't.
I can't congratulate an arsonist for putting out the fire that they started. You know?
Well, I suppose if they put out the fire, that's better than continuing to fuel the flames, isn't it? But look, I am totally accepting that net migration got to a totally unreasonable level, and it was on our watch. And
it's on Labour's watch now.
It's on their watch now.
Down.
But we did actually bring in under Rishi Sunak. We did change the arrangements, and you are now seeing those numbers come down as a consequence. Yeah.
Look, Mel, when I found out you'd agreed to come on the show, I asked around about you.
Oh, yeah.
I spoke to Labour MPs, Tory MPs, a couple of members of the House of Lords, fellow journalists. Yeah. You're a very smart man. You went to Oxford University. You were president of the union.
Yes.
You started your own business that became an international business. Yeah. Everyone says that you're polite. Everyone says that you're enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Why did you enter politics?
I entered politics late in life. I was 48 years old, and I had gone out and built businesses from scratch, and I mean scratch, sitting at the kitchen table and getting the ideas together and climbing those metaphorical mountains with team, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I did it here and in the United States, and I ended up, age 48, feeling that I'd had got enough experience of the real world, particularly of business and entrepreneurship, to actually contribute something. And I was also deeply frustrated with all sorts of things that were going on. I thought, why are they doing this? And in the end, I thought, well, then maybe I should get in there and become part of what's going on and try and shape things. And I never looked back, never regretted going into the House of Commons. It's been a great privilege.
Why are we not seeing more good MPs like yourself? Because maybe there's more people like you in the House of Commons, but the perception we get as the public is that a lot of careerists, they'll do the job to progress themselves further. They're not really there to help the country. They're there to help themselves. Once they get voted out, they'll then go and get a nice cushy job as some kind of consultant.
So look, I'm a little bit less cynical than that. I think that most members of Parliament, in fact, the vast majority, are in it for the right reasons. I think they genuinely do want to affect good change, and they may disagree about what that looks like, but I think that is why they're there. And in fact, interestingly, if you poll the public and say, "What do you think of politicians generally?" they'll have a fairly dim view.
Yeah.
If you say, well, what do you think of your local MP? Often they'll say, well, actually, he or she is not too bad. So I think, generally speaking, MPs, do probably get a rather tougher press than they deserve. But your comment about who's going in and the quality of the people in there, I think we do need to encourage more people, particularly from business, particularly people that have gone out and created things and, all of that kind of side of things is the bit that I think is too thin on the ground. Part of the reason why people don't go in, particularly women, of course, is that it's quite an abusive environment, actually.
Oh, really?
Not within the Commons itself.
Oh, okay. No. Are you going to blame the press?
No, never foolish enough to blame the press. We love the press, always love the press, particularly the Daily Expresso. They are the best of the best. Okay.
Perfect.
But nonetheless, I think in the social media side of things, in that public square, I think it is very tough. And I think for women it's particularly tough. They seem to get the rougher end of it, I think.
Yeah.
And it impacts upon your family. And so I can understand why sometimes people decide it's not for them. So there is some thinking we need to do around that, I think.
Kemi was fantastic yesterday at PMQs. Do you genuinely think, honestly, she's going to be the next Prime Minister of this country?
Yeah, I think there's every chance of that. She'll certainly be the leader of our party taking us into the next election, and she should be. And I've always said that from the start. I stood myself in the leadership contest. She won, and fair and square, and I think she's getting better and better. And I think I think there have been two big things that have changed for our party over the last few months. One is this idea that nobody knows what the Conservative Party stands for and we don't have any policies. And I think we substantially put that to bed at conference, where we had a very good, clear set of offers and why we believed in the things we believed: smaller government, lower taxes, and a down payment of that in some of the policies we came forward with.
Yeah.
And secondly, this idea that, Kemi, is not up to being leader of the opposition. I think she has vanquished that idea, and I don't hear anybody really now, particularly after yesterday and her improvement on PMQs through time. I don't hear many people saying that now. I think she is beginning to shine, and it was a great moment for her yesterday.
Yeah.
And do you know what? When you sit next to her, and there's all the theatre and all the shouting going around you, which you don't often hear so much when you're on the TV, you're listening on the TV.
Yeah.
But when you're in there, you're very aware of it. And she thrives on it. She got stuck in, she gets excited, she gets animated, and I think really enjoys it. And that's a sign of growing confidence.
True. You were at Work and Pensions under Rishi Sunak.
Yep.
What was the most shocking things you saw while running that department?
I saw a department that wants to do good. I saw a department full of people that care about millions of people in our country and want to make sure we look after the most vulnerable. But I also saw a system that was broken in terms of too many people being on benefits, the incentives in the system being wrong.
Yeah.
So I set about reforming it in the 18 months that I had, which in terms of a big department is not very long. But we brought in changes and reforms to the work capability assessment, which is that gateway onto those longer-term sickness and disability benefits. And by making reforms to that, the OBR said there would be 450,000 fewer people going onto those benefits and actually being directed into the direction of work. And I consider that to be a very significant achievement. The problem was, of course, when the government got into office, they scrapped it. And it's one of the first things they did. Came up with their own ideas, but they failed to get through their backbenchers, and we've gone really back to square one, sadly.
Yeah.
But a wonderful department, but also a department, it spends about £250 billion a year. It's got the biggest budget in Whitehall if you include pensions and things.
Yeah.
And it also has 90,000 employees. It could be a department that I think is much better run from the top, and I think we need to think about getting some people with business experience in at the top around the Secretary of State to drive change. And secondly, I think it could be much slimmer and leaner. It doesn't actually need 90,000. You've got AI and better systems in there.
Yeah.
You could actually slim it down quite a lot. So I was very aware when I was Secretary of State of the potential for doing things more efficiently and effectively in a big department.
Do you think we've perhaps gone a bit soft as a nation? Is
In
Britain
what
in decline?
sense? Probably
In every sense, Mel. So we've got more people now, especially young people, unemployed. We have young people saying that they don't want to work for a boss that shouts at them.
Yeah.
We have people who are signed up to welfare more. We've got 3,000 people going on unemployment every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have we just gone soft as a nation?
I think to a degree that's a fair observation.
You are
and
such a
I'll
nice
tell
guy,
you
Mel.
why.
You
But
won't.
no. Well, no, I'm kind of agreeing with you. So I think we've had too much labelling of people in our society.
Yeah.
If you go into a classroom nowadays, there's a plethora of different things that people are labelled as having, children's labels as having. When it comes to not being in work but being on benefits, once again, there are all sorts of things which, if you take mild depression, would be things that perhaps in previous generations people would have said, well, look, this is the rough and tumble of life. Of course, you have your tougher moments, but work, for example, is part of coping with that, actually, because it gives you that sense of routine and being in with a group of people and socialising and the conversations at the water cooler, whatever it may be. And I think we have lost sight of some of that, yes.
Okay. Well, what about the disillusionment of the voter? People, one of the criticisms that I often hear is Labour and Tories, you're the same party, basically. We've got a Labour government that feels like Tory 2.0, which is why we're seeing Reform and the Greens, or more, rather Farage and Polanski, going up in the polls. How are you going to combat that on both sides?
By being the grown-ups in this multi-party system. So let me just give you my quick analysis. We've had a Conservative Party that got very severely rejected at the general election, a sense of visceral anger, actually, within the electorate. And I think we moved on from that to a degree, but we've got further work to be done. You've got a Labour Party that is palpably making the wrong decisions and mismanaging the economy, illegal migration, all sorts of things. It is very low in the polls. And I think into the vacuum in the middle are now popping up the populists. And I'd include the Greens within this, but certainly Reform, who were able to go out and promise all sorts of things, taking everybody up to £20,000 out of tax altogether, as a reform in their last manifesto, without having to explain how they're going to deliver that. So in the case of that example I just gave, you would actually need to find about £80 billion to do that. That's about half what we spend on the NHS every year.
Yeah.
And it's 1.5 million people. It's a colossal amount of money. And you cannot simply say, oh, well, we'll find a bit of waste here. Then, as we're finding with local authorities that reform is running, they're not finding the waste. And they're not cutting people's council tax. They're actually putting it up again.
Yeah.
So I think there is a market for populism. But what we've got to do is be the grown-ups in the room who are prepared to articulate that there are big challenges that our country has, that there are no 5-minute quick fixes, that we have to think things through very carefully. At our conference, we laid out £47 billion worth of savings. Those numbers have not been picked apart. Okay, they've withstood the test of time because it was properly thought through. Show that we can be fiscally responsible, which means bearing down on our debt, and show that we have a plan for getting taxes down, getting the economy moving. But also, we've got to address a lot of other things. Skills. What skills going to look like when you've got higher education at the moment? Too many people going through university, not getting a sufficiently good degree to actually confer enough economic added value to justify going in the first place. You've got AI coming along that's churning up the labour market in ways that will be profound and in many ways uncertain and unknown. And you need a much more nimble skills offer to cope with that. It's a lot of thinking around apprenticeships, lifelong learning. Got to think about how do we build things quickly, on time and on budget. Okay, roads, rail, houses.
Well, how do you do that?
When we've got a lot of it's planning. A lot of it is planning and creating an environment where you can actually get things done quickly. We ended up with HS2, if you remember, with this bat tunnel. Do you remember?
Yeah.
£125 million bat tunnel. The Chinese, while we're doing that, were building the Shanghai to Beijing superfast railway in 3 years from start to finish.
Yeah.
Okay, we are so far behind. You look at energy costs in our country, we're paying 4 or 5 times the energy, electricity costs that they are in America and Canada, probably 7 times what the Chinese are paying, 50% more than the French and the Germans. There are fundamental reasons why that's the case. They are not insurmountable, but they require a good, robust, long-term investment plan to put that right, as well as some things you can do in the shorter term. So by going into that detail, all I'm trying to illustrate, to get back to your question, is the party that will come through, I think, will be the party that sets out clear, well-thought-through plans, fights for a hearing for those plans, and in a multi-party system, everybody else jumping up and down, on TikTok saying, I can solve all your problems, we will come through, and we have 3.5 years to do it.
Well, speaking of the next general election, do you want to have Keir Starmer still be leader of the Labour Party?
That's a matter for the Labour Party. I mean,
who's
whether he'll survive or not.
Who's easier for you to take on?
I tend not to see things like that. I think, will it be Keir or not? I really don't know. I think he's on a sticky wicket.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, but I think he may be an easier person for you to vanquish than Angela Rayner.
Well, I think no. I think actually Angela Rayner on economics is just so far out there that I don't think it would last contact with reality for too long. I think she'd struggle.
Okay.
I mean, part of Labour. Get back to where we started with this conversation. Part of the problem at the heart of this budget, and why it's not a proper comprehensive plan for actually getting the economy growing, is that Rachel and Keir are in hock to the left of the Labour Party, who sit on their backbenches and are constraining what they can do. Won't let them cut welfare spending, won't let them control government spending, don't mind about putting taxes up. In fact, probably quite relish putting some taxes up on wealthier people. They're quite happy to do that and rub their hands in glee. But the damage, I'm afraid, is being done. So I think if she was at the helm, I think there would be problems for Labour actually if the left took over.
Okay, Mel Stride, thank you very much for your time.
A great pleasure, JJ. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. You're welcome back whenever you wish.
Yeah, I'll come again.
Super.
All right. Okay.
Thank you all for watching and listening. Leave your comments. Let me know if you agree with Mel Stride or if you think Labour are the future. I'm not so sure about that myself. Anyway, thank you for watching Daily Expresso and see you again. Bye-bye.